Hey kiddos, this is Mrs. Campos, and these are your first notes. And we're basically going to do a quick little review of algebra. So, part A here is just dealing with algebraic expressions. So, we're going to be evaluating, which is basically us just substituting into our expression. So, if they tell us that x is 15 and y is -7, we're going to make sure that in this expression, x minus 5 plus y, that we change x to 15 and y to -7. So we would get 15 minus 5 plus -7. And then obviously here we would make sure that we follow PEMDAS. Okay, order of operations is important. So let's see what we get. So 15 minus 5 gives us 10 plus -7. So 10 plus -7 leaves us with an answer of 3. All right, let's try this again. Example 2. Evaluating for 2 times k plus n, all divided by p minus 3. They tell us that k is -2. They tell us that n is -4. And they tell us that p is 5. All right, so let's remember order matters. 2 times -2, -4 plus -4 divided by 5 minus 3 is 2. All right. -4 plus -4, -8 divided by 2. And that would reduce to negative answer of 4. -4. All right, now I want you guys, yes, I know you can read, try these on your own. All right, so you're doing the exact same thing as the previous two problems. So you're evaluating each one of these expressions, number 1 and number 2, by using that A is 2, B is -3, C is -1, and D is 4. So be sure to substitute it in. Use, as I was doing, I always find it easier to break it down by using parentheses. Kind of helps make it a lot simpler so you make sure that you don't miss anything. All right, so hopefully you finished the other two problems. And if you haven't already paused the video and completed that, go ahead and make sure you do so before you continue. But this is part B, and we're going to be talking about linear equations and linear inequalities. Okay, so first example, kind of a basic equation problem here. We have, as you hopefully can notice, a distribution problem here on the left side of the equal sign. And I also should notice that we have variables on both sides of our equation. So first thing that we do need to deal with is distribution. So 3 times x leaves us with 3x. 3 times -5 gives us -15 equal to, and I'm just going to bring what's on the right side. All right, now we're looking to combine like terms. We can technically move whichever one of the variables that we would like. Usually tends to be easier to move the smallest one, but like I said, you can move whichever one you prefer. I'm going to go with moving the x, and remember, there's an invisible 1 in front of that x, so we're going to do the opposite because you're moving across an equal sign. What you do to one side, you always do to the other. 3x minus 1x is 2x. Bring down the -15, bring down the equal sign, bring down 13, and that canceled out. So now our problem is 2x minus 15 equals 3. I teach this a little bit differently. I always tell my students to box the variable that they are solving for, and that basically means that whatever's next to it is what I have to get rid of, and what's next to it is a -15. So how do I move a -15 to the opposite side? By adding 15. And if I'm moving too slow for your pace, guys, feel free to move ahead. That cancels out. I bring down what's in my box. 2x equals 13 plus 15 gives us 28. All right, last step is going to be to divide both sides by the value of 2. That's the number next to our variable. That cancels out, and we end up with x equal to 14. All right, example 2. Now, if you notice this example, we have two variables here. So we have x and y. If we have x and y, we're going to go with, this is a linear, far more linear equation, okay? So we're going to put this in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. I do notice, usually when you see parentheses, that's the key sign that this is distribution that we need to do first. So we are going to distribute this value that's right outside of it, which is a 4. So 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times negative 2y is negative 8. Y equals 16. All right, as before, I box my variable that I am solving for, and we're solving for y because we want it to be in slope-intercept form. So we want y to be isolated, aka by itself. So I got to get rid of that 8x, and the opposite of positive 8x is making it negative 8x or minus 8x. What I do to one side, I know I do to the other. So those cancel out. I bring down what's in my box, which is the negative 8y equals, notice, hopefully you remember your rules, you cannot combine these two values because the 16 does not have a variable x with it. So because we cannot combine them, then we just bring them both down. So I'll bring down the negative 8x first, and then that 16 is positive, so put a plus sign in front of it. Last step, pretty much always, consistently, is to divide because we have a value next to our variable. We're going to divide by that value, which is negative 8. So that cancels out. We get y by itself, which is what we want. Negative 8x divided by negative 8 gives us a positive 1x or x. You can put the 1 in front of it if it makes you feel better. And then 16 divided by negative 8 gives us a negative 2. So we get y equals x minus 2. All right, here are two more examples. And notice these are inequalities. A few things that you need to remember about inequalities. I guess the biggest thing about inequalities is the sign can flip if you divide or multiply by a negative. All right, so make sure that you always keep that in mind. If you ever divide or multiply by a negative number, then you have to switch the direction of your inequality symbol. So here we have one variable, so it makes it pretty simple. We have negative 6a plus 13 is less than negative 7. So I'm going to box the negative 6a because that's what I'm solving for. That means I need to cancel or get rid of the positive 13, and I'm going to do the opposite by making it minus 13. All right. Bring down what's in my box. That cancels out. Bring down the inequality symbol, and negative 7 minus 13 gives us negative 20. All right, we're going to now divide both sides by negative 6. And notice I said the key word there, divide. So since I am dividing by a negative, I automatically know that that inequality sign is going to switch the other direction. So I do that first so I do not forget. That cancels out to a by itself. Now, negative 20 divided by 6 is going to be a decimal. We don't want a decimal answer. So I know the answer is going to be positive because the negatives are going to cancel out. So the fraction is going to be, should get 10 over 3 when we reduce it. I think that's the lowest it's going to get. All right, example 4. Notice we have variables on both sides. All right, so we have to make sure that we get those together first, ideally. So we're going to move the smaller value, which is the 4z, and I'm going to move that 4z by subtracting 4z to both sides. That cancels out. 7 is greater than or equal to 8z minus 4z is just 4z minus 1. All right, I'm going to box the 4z because z is what I'm solving for. We get to add 1 to both sides because that's the opposite of negative 1. That cancels out. We get 4z. 7 plus 1 is 8. So 8 is greater than or equal to 4z. Last step here is to divide by 4. And we end up with 2 is greater than or equal to z. Technically, we don't like to read things this direction. We like our variables to be on the left side. So pay attention to what Pac-Man is eating. Pac-Man is eating 2. So when I reorder the values, Pac-Man better still be eating 2. So you get z is less than or equal to 2. All right, once again, on your own. Here, a little trickier. You're going to probably want to drop that 3 because you are going to distribute this negative 2. All right, just a little hint there. Notice you do have variables on both sides as well. This second problem here, it is 2 variables that are different involved. So this also needs to be in slope-intercept form. Obviously, instead of it being y equals, it's going to be y less than or greater than, in this case, mx plus b. Also, please make sure that you guys actually attempt this. If you have questions, write them down because we'll go over these type of problems in class specifically. In order to get credit for having this done, you have to have these problems completed. Word. All right, moving on to part C, which is about point slope form. Please make sure that you've already answered the previous 2 questions. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's all gravy. Part C. All right, point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So, first example. We're going to write an equation of a line in point slope form that passes through the points 2, negative 2, and 5, 7. So the first thing that we need to do is find the slope. Okay, M stands for slope. Notice I have the slope formula here for those of you who prefer to use that. So we need to first label our point x1, y1, x2, y2. So this is going to be x1, y1, x2, y2, okay? First point, second point. According to this formula, y2 goes first, so that's 7 minus y1, which is negative 2, divided by 5 minus x1, which is 2. All right, so let's see what we get. 7, take away negative 2, 2 negatives back to back, change into positives, so 7 plus positive 2 is 9. Over 5 minus 2 is 3. 9 divided by 3 does reduce perfectly into the value 3. So our slope is 3. So for our final answer, you have luxury because you were given 2 points to pick which points you want. Now, I would always pick a point that has 2 positive values because it makes my life 100 times easier, and I'm less likely to make a mistake when I put it back in this formula. So I'm going to write the formula here underneath because I want to make sure that I get this right. All right, so we have y minus y1. I'm using 0.2 here. Okay, so my y value for this is 7 equals, we discovered that the slope is 3 times x minus the x value we have is 5. So that is our final answer in point slope form. Pause the video and try this problem out. Okay, so just like the previous problem I did, write the equation of point slope form of a line that goes through the points negative 1, 3, and 1, 2. There actually may be more than one correct answer, so select all that are correct. Remember, I could have used either one of these points in selecting my answer. Make sure that the first thing that you do is you find the slope, okay? Y2 minus Y1 by X2 minus X1. Okay, be sure to label your 2 points here, okay, as your first point and your second point. All right. Lines that are parallel have the same slopes, and lines that are perpendicular have opposite reciprocal slopes. Hopefully we all know that parallel lines are 2 lines basically that will never, ever, ever touch at any point in time, hence the reason why their slopes are the same. Perpendicular slopes are special lines because when they cross each other, they create something special, which is known as a right angle. That's what makes them perpendicular. In order to be perpendicular, you have to have an opposite reciprocal. So, for example, if the slope originally, so let's say if the original slope is 3, then the perpendicular slope, please excuse my writing, the perpendicular slope would be, all right, let me make that whole number. We're going to make it the opposite. So if it's positive, it becomes negative. If I flip that, it becomes negative 1/3. Okay, so just a little refresher on that real quick. So next example, example number 2, we have 2y equals 6x minus 2, and they have given us this point 1, -3. They want us to create a line that is going to be perpendicular to this line here that they've given us and contains this specific point. Okay, so for point slope form, we have our point that we need. So remember point slope form, let me write it down for us under here, is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so we already have our point, so we already have our x1 and our y1. We need to figure out what our slope is. Now, hopefully you all noticed something before you just wrote down the number 6 here, okay, because that is not the answer. Hopefully you realize that in order to find that slope, we actually have to divide everything by 2 because this equation is not solved for. All right, so the actual equation is y equals 3x minus 1. So the original slope is 3. Now, coincidentally, if you were paying attention, you probably already wrote this down because I actually did this. I already did an original slope of 3. What would be the perpendicular slope to that? Negative 1/3. So I make 3 the opposite. So if it was positive, it becomes negative. And if I flip 3, which is 3 over 1, and I flip it over, it becomes 1 over 3. So the new slope is 1 over 3. Now all we have to do is plug this into point slope form. Y minus, now be careful, y1 is -3. So what happens when you have a negative and a negative? You're right, it becomes positive, plus 3, equals negative 1/3 times x minus x1 is 1. All right, let's look at another example. This time they want us to find a line that is parallel to this line but contains this point, 8, 5. So again, as you guys see, I always like to write my formulas down, or my forms, because it makes sure that I don't mess up. So I'm also going to label my point x1, y1. I do expect you guys to do all that I'm doing, FYI. So the original slope, we can actually figure that out. We don't have to solve anything here, is -1/2. All right. Now to find the new slope, it's parallel. So if it's parallel, you really don't have to do any work. The new slope is going to be the same. All right, that's the beauty of parallel lines. So let's go ahead and plug this in then. So we get y. Now the nice part also about your point is both values are positive, so we really don't have to stress about switching anything. So we get y minus y1, which is 5, equals our slope, which was -1/2, times x minus x1, 8. All right. And moving on. Yay, now you get to try this problem on your own. Okay, notice you have a equation here. Do not forget that the value 1 is always going to be in front of x if there is no number. Okay, your point is 3, 0. All right, so this is the point that I expect you guys to use. For this part here, I want it to be perpendicular. So remember, that does mean you change the slope. And then for this problem here, you're going to exact same, okay? But instead of it being perpendicular, it's now going to be parallel. So remember what's special about parallel lines and their slopes. All right? So for both of these, you're going to use the exact same point. Again, be sure that if you have any questions, that you guys jot them down. We'll discuss this first thing when you come to class. Adios.